What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about Opendoor. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, as well as what Carrie is speaking out against. Before we get into any of that, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So on Friday, Opendoor did have a fairly nice recovery, up 5.41%, but still over the last 5 days it is down 16.21%, largely because of their earnings. So when it comes to this upcoming week, there is actually a lot of big data that could really help Opendoor and the broader market move higher. So starting off, we do have CPI on Tuesday. Wednesday, we have a couple of Fed speakers. And in fact, throughout the whole week, there's a lot of Fed speakers. So depending on what they state, that could really help the market. But aside from that, we do have PPI, and then on Friday, retail sales and Michigan consumer sentiment. So a lot of inflationary data that could allude to a cut, or at least further validate a cut for September and then October. And then we also have a lot of consumer linked data. So at the end of the day, that's pretty much the perfect kind of scenario for Opendoor to really move higher. There isn't anything planned for this upcoming week, so no fireside chats or anything, but you did see Carrie do a post. So Carrie Wheeler, who is the CEO of Opendoor, looks like they just made a Twitter because they only have 2,300 followers and ultimately only have one post. So kind of interesting for that, but they do mention that there's been a lot of new attention on Opendoor from investors recently. It's an incredible gift. I'm deeply thankful for every new shareholder who believes in what we're building. Some are calling this a meme moment, and honestly, there is a lot of people that did believe in Opendoor, and there's always been this divide whether it's considered a meme stock versus not. And I think that has to do with a lot of people throwing out some crazy price targets, such as like $100. I've seen $250, like crazy numbers. That camp right there, I believe that is solely meme. And the reason why she's actually doing this right here, actually I'll further finish this and then I'll kind of go over this, but if that means thousands of people choosing to own part of Opendoor because they believe in the long-term value and transformation we're driving in, I'm all in. So she's trying to really appeal to long-term investors, because individuals for meme trading is just in and out. That's pretty much it. They're not in it for they don't care about the company. It could be anything. It could be whatever, Joe Blow's blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter to the company. They get in because of the hype and for a squeeze. That is it. They don't care about the underlying business. So I get her viewpoint and I do applaud what she's trying to do. Their most recent earnings, I think it did signal that the recent price action for it to hit like the high fours, that was largely meme. So at the end of the day, now that earnings has concluded, what we're trading at is the fair value. So I feel like all the meme investors, for the most part, have left. Those investors that believe in Opendoor are here to pretty much stay. Even though technically, if there is a surprise catalyst or whatever else, you could see a squeeze because shorts are still very much all over this stock. But one thing I do want to bring up though is this right here, the quantitative data. You do have valuation, growth, profitability, momentum, and revisions. So revisions is set at a C+, momentum A+, profitability F, growth F, and valuation is A-. And this is how they ultimately get that. So for those of you that are interested, feel free to pause it and you can kind of go through this. But nonetheless, like I said, post earnings, what it's trading at is the fair value. So again, for those meme investors and whatever else, it is what it is. But like I said, shorts are very much all over this stock and anticipate them this upcoming week to pretty much be the same type of scenario, how that plays out. So shorts on Friday did return 173,000 shares. Going into this upcoming week, 32.85% of the free float is being shorted. Works out to be 215 million shares overall being shorted. Utilization 96.04, short score 71.81. So the higher the number, the higher the likelihood of a squeeze is there. So yeah, this is pretty much very high stuff. All-time high though was roughly around on July the 30th when it was at about 34% short interest. So not the all-time high, but it is still very, very close. Looking at the options from Friday, 3.5 million in calls, 1.8 million in puts. And then based on the bulls, there's a consensus for this upcoming week for it to be roughly around that 250. And then the bears are anticipating for it to be sub $1.50. So there's a lot of movement anticipated clearly on both camps, bulls and bears. Open interest, so with it closing just slightly below that $2 strike price, that does mean that the $2 and above strike prices all expire worthless. So we did have 56,000 at that 2, 82,000 at that 250, and then 70,000 at that 3, which is rather unfortunate because if Opendoor for whatever reason was to close above 3, then you would have saw a very nice gamma squeeze, very large one in fact, but unfortunately it didn't really pan out as so. But right now with it at 195, it is trading between this pivot and this S1. So Friday it was able to successfully transition from this S1 to the S2 to this pivot to this S1. So $1.87 is going to be a strong support. Just watch for that to hold going into next week. And then 222, 258, and then 280 is going to be the following target slash resistance points. But aside from that though, there was one new recent rating that did come out Friday, posted after hours. It was a downgrade by Zelman, a $1 sell. So most likely going into next week, the market's going to be digesting that one right there. As a consensus over the last 3 months, $1.02 is that price target, representing a 47.69% downside. So kind of contradicts the whole valuation quantitative data, but then again, analysts are sheep. They're pretty dumb in most cases, even though a lot of them do make 150,000+. But even just looking at some of their ratings, like 45%, if you want, you might as well just flip a damn coin and have a better rating than this individual right here. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, analysts are a little bit slow to the game, but that's not specific to Opendoor. That's pretty much across the board. But going into this upcoming week, there is also 0 shares available. You can kind of see that right here. So 0 shares available. So shorts are rather overextended. So going into this week, it's kind of putting them in a rough scenario. But right here, you do have that 200-day moving average, very faint yellow line. My apologies on that, but that is a $1.34. So that's going to be a very key point to really watch for if you're going to see any of these gains hold. So if it does break below that 200-day moving average, then I think you're going to see significant pull lower from there. Stochastic RSI very oversold. So given how far it did fall from that, it's very oversold, so that could really stand to benefit going into this upcoming week if there is some good data specific to Opendoor or even on a macro standpoint. So this is why I started the video with all those data points. So if we have, let's say, CPI or PPI coming in better than anticipated, Opendoor could really move up. So again, if you're wanting to buy or kind of exit, just take note of some of the strong support and resistance points that I did mention. So aside from 187, you have 165 and then 129 as the support levels. This S3 right here, that 129, if it does break below that, then yeah, you're going to see sub $1 in reality. But yeah, it's interesting to see the CEO actually speak out about the whole meme mentality. So yeah, got to give them a round of applause for that. So let me know your thoughts on Opendoor. Where do you see things going for this upcoming week? Do you realistically feel that $100, $200 is fair for this company, or do you think that, let's say, it's going to just linger around that $3 range? What's your honest thoughts on Opendoor? And do you still own it? Did you get in because of the whole meme kind of craze, or did you actually like the company from the get-go? One final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point and bangers. And as well, this is free right over here. So take a look at IBKR. I've also a link to them in the description. And if you are wanting all this good data that I always share on a lot of my videos, such as analyst ratings, forecasts, ownership, everything that you ever need in life, it's definitely worthwhile to kind of sign up because, like I said, it's free data. So let me know your viewpoint on all of that. Hopefully everyone's having an amazing weekend, and thanks for watching.